Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Varsity Club Lacrosse podcast presented by Focus on the Field. Now, Focus on the Field is an administrative service provider focused on youth sports organizations. They offer a fully outsourced turnkey solution to the administrative burden facing administrators, coaches, and volunteers. They offer multiple services through administration, communication, registration, and technology. The Focus on the Field team has extensive experience in youth services and parent engagement with a deep understanding of the nuance involved in driving a positive experience. This, combined with years of industry knowledge in youth sports, has enabled Focus on the Field to become the modern solution in optimizing youth sports administration. All right, now back to the episode.
Hello, and welcome to the Varsity Club Lacrosse Podcast, the world's greatest club lacrosse podcast. I'm Austin Bosworth, your temporary co-host, and alongside me today is the ever-present numero uno, Sam Criscola. Brian let us take the lead on this episode because of its connection to our previous episode, The Indigenous Roots of the Game, and it includes a spectacular interview for all of you to experience. Today, we're going to briefly discuss the latest scores and surprises of the MCLA, followed by an interview with Kevin Sandy and Rick Roy. Kevin Sandy, CEO of the Haudenosaunee Lacrosse Program, is an international advocate for the gift of lacrosse and resides with his family in Ontario. Rick Roy, director of the Harney County Lacrosse Program and coach of the Nazitsaga, is an Eastern Oregon resident who brought his stick with him when he left his home in New England. We discuss the Indigenous roots of the game, connecting with Indigenous communities in your area, and the critical importance of the international community recognizing Haudenosaunee nationhood and the right to compete under their own flag when their sport is being played at the Olympics once again in 2028. Sam, what's going on in the MCLA?
Before we get into that, Boz, I just want to congratulate you on the first episode and the first bio. It isn't always easy, sometimes mess up words, but you just got to go along with it. So I just wanted to say welcome in, and especially because this is such an important episode for yourself, just because of your connection to the topics we talk about. But we do have some MCLA news to talk about. And it has been a while. We've been slacking since we've done a last interview. I think we missed weeks 1 through 3 in the MCLA, but we are here for week 4. And there are two articles I want to talk about. The first one is the What is the MCLA article, written by Jack Coyne, who's an executive director for the MCLA. And Jack handles a lot of the journalistic aspect of the MCLA. I know I was writing some players of the week last year, and I've written an article, but it was always through Jack Coyne. So he definitely knows what he's doing and what he's talking about. And I think it's a super insightful article just based on what the MCLA truly is, because I feel like a lot of people don't really understand what it is. A lot of people do think it's a feeder league, which it's honestly the complete opposite. So check that one out. And then also just a kind of heads up, there's the MCLA TV has dropped. And that's just sort of a place where you can go to find all the streams that are available in just one spot. So it makes it super easy for yourself as the viewer. So just go check that out on a weekend and find your favorite team. We do have some ranking storylines from this last weekend. Boz, I don't know if you want to touch on a couple of those, and we can kind of go back and forth on some.
Absolutely. I'll jump in with our first. Liberty loses a heartbreaker home game against Northeastern. I believe the final score was 9-8, 8-7, with Liberty dropping to 9 in the rankings and Northeastern rising to 8th.
Yeah, and what's interesting about that is then Northeastern goes on to play Virginia Tech and loses. I think it was a decently close game, but maybe around 6 goals. I think that also just shows how tough Virginia Tech really is, but also just a gorgeous game between Liberty and Northeastern. You can't really ask for a better game while watching as an audience member. I mean, the closest it is, the better. You don't want to see a blowout. But we're going to go to Georgia and JMU next. I'm going to give a slight shout out to JMU. They've been grinding for a while. They kind of got dropped into MCLA and into D1 and weren't really doing well their first year. I feel like last year wasn't really anything crazy, but this year seems to be their year. They beat Georgia, who is a very good team. They've proven themselves in the last year, still a good team, but they take that game 10-8. Georgia drops to 16, JMU to 15. And the only other thing I'll say about that is JMU also played a really close game with South Carolina, and South Carolina, again, is also a very good team. So I think that just goes to show JMU how they're looking this year. Ready to turn some more heads, I believe. We'll see though.
Sam, it also goes to show that any given day, any given team in the MCLA that's ready for that game could beat another team. So totally agree on some of these upsets, but I think also the season's going to show that some teams are going to rise to the occasion and really take hold of some opportunities. Another awesome call out from this weekend was teams from several conferences came together this past weekend for the annual Pac-12 shootout. RIP to the Pac-12. Many teams had an excellent showing and set a standard for the rest of the season, our Ducks included. Others have plenty to learn from and improve over the weeks ahead, also including our Ducks. SDSU in Arizona had a dominating weekend, and other notable games of the weekend include a UCLA victory over Washington and a resounding win for Cal over USC on Sunday.
Yeah, and those tournaments are always fun just because you get teams from all over that sometimes maybe they don't play, maybe they will play, but also kind of gives, I think, that high school club atmosphere where you've just got a bunch of teams waiting to play the next game, sitting by, practicing on the side field. So always a good time there. And then kind of we'll go to another tournament here for D2. And this is just a tweet I read. This is not coming from my mouth, but I've heard that Cal State San Marcos is on fraud watch. I don't really have anything to say for it, but they did beat a top 25 team, so I'll give them that. But a loss to Air Force 21-6 is not anything you want on the season. And again, that was, I believe, during the Rocky Mountain Rumble, I believe. We need to do some better research with these D2 teams. That is for sure our fault. But that is the one game we've got. Just because I think there wasn't a lot of upsets going on in the D2 league, but there was that Montana State game beating Missouri State. I think there were good games all around in that tournament, kind of the same atmosphere as the Pac-12 shootout. But with that being said, Cal State San Marcos dropped to number 8 from number 2, I believe, or 3. It's kind of a big jump there. Same with Liberty. Again, like you said, Boz, that's what's so beautiful about the MCLA. You really never know what's going to go on, and especially so early in the season, there's always a bunch of turnover. Sometimes you get NCAA transfers. Sometimes you get really good freshmen. It's just how it is. You never really know what's going to happen. But that is the beauty of the game.
Agreed. So the beauty of those tournaments too is getting an idea of what your other teams look like this year. Because like you said, a team can look completely different from one year to the next, depending on coaching, injuries, transfers, what have you. And so getting an idea of what you're up against is really beneficial when you're talking about such a long season as a lot of teams in the MCLA have. That'll do it for the MCLA News Roundup. Up next is our interview with Kevin Sandy and Rick Roy. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Varsity Club Lacrosse. I am Austin Bosworth. I am here as a co-host with a normal co-host, Sam Criscola. Brian Plunkett is taking the week off, and I'm filling his space as we are having a wonderful conversation today with two members of the Indigenous lacrosse community here in America. First, we have Kevin Sandy, who is the CEO of the Haudenosaunee Lacrosse Program, and Rick Roy, who is leader of the Harney County Lacrosse Program, referred to as the Zitsiga, as requested by the Burns Paiute Tribal Council. Without further ado, we will jump right into it. Let's see here. Kevin and Rick, thank you so much for joining us today.
Pleasure to be here.
Hey, how's it going?
Having some muting problems early on. Gotta love it.
First time hosting technical difficulties. We will keep with the show. Well, first off, I want to say
thank you both for. There you go, Boz. You got it. Take it away.
No, please do it, Sam. Please do it.
I just want to say thank you for both of us and from Varsity Club Lacrosse for joining us today. I think this is going to be a really special episode for us and for you as well and your community. Our whole thing is spreading the game and spreading the word, whatever that may be. And I think this week's special message is really going to hit home for a lot of people, just because I think this is one thing that the lacrosse community as a whole doesn't really do its part. And I think this is going to be a super beneficial way for everybody to kind of learn about your guys' community and what that really means in lacrosse culture. So thank you guys for being on here and super excited.
Well,
And I think we'd kind of just like to hear a little bit about your guys' background, maybe how you guys have started. I know for a lot of Indigenous people, it's kind of closer to the same pattern with, getting a stick in your hand early on and going from there. But I think we'd just love to hear a little bit about you guys' background and culture.
okay, I'll go first. Kevin? Actually, I grew up in New England. I grew up in New Hampshire at a time when lacrosse was really just restricted to the prep schools. There was only 1 or 2 public high schools that played at that time. I was a multi-sport athlete. We knew about lacrosse, but I really didn't get a real opportunity to play until I went to college. And the head coach was also dean of students, so he got to see all the applications for kids coming in. And so I wasn't on campus 2 days, and I was recruited to be a lacrosse player. And I played football, hockey, basketball, soccer, and it was just easy to pick up if you had an athletic background. And that's really how I started. Actually, when my grandmother, my dad's mom, found out that I started playing lacrosse, she got all excited because when she was a little girl in Quebec City over 100 years ago, she played lacrosse. So it was pretty cool, see my grandmother just, start screaming and yelling in French because she's so excited about, me playing lacrosse. And so I played 4 years college ball back in one of those nice little New England, liberal arts colleges, and then played some men's league for a few years back there, and then moved out west. Went to University of Arizona for grad school, played a little bit there. But I was, 5 or 6, 7 years older than a lot of lacrosse players, so I didn't quite identify with those guys anymore. And then traveled around the West, and then when I got the burns, I actually started coaching football. And one day I go in, helping some of the kids remove a bunch of football gear from a place they call the dungeon, where all the football gear is stored for practice. And I look over and I see a 55-gallon drum full of lacrosse sticks. Come to find out, they're teaching in PE. And so I grabbed they're soft lacrosse sticks, right? So I grabbed the stick and grabbed one of the balls, and I started playing wall ball. And the kids were just looking at me like, "Do you play this?" And I was like, "Yeah, this is what I played college." And started doing that. And then one of the kids on the team, Paiute kid, named Gabe First Raised, said something to his dad, and I knew his dad. And his dad came up to me one day and said, "Teach us our game." And like my college coach said, don't ever let me find out that someone asked you to teach them this game and you said no, because I'll haunt you forever. And right, because that's what you're supposed to do. And I took the time to teach you. Now you need to pass it. You need to pass it on. And so I said, okay. And then that's 15, 16, 17 years ago. It's quite a while ago. And so we started that program, and Burns Paiute Tribal Council requested that we use the name of the traditional ball and stick game called the Zitsaga, or one of the names for it, and as we name our club. And that's what we've done to try to honor that part of the game. But the other part is that the gentleman that asked me to start the program, who's no longer with us, he wanted a community program, not just a Paiute program. And then he wanted really to create a lacrosse culture. Paiutes are not Haudenosaunee. And there's different culture, but he wanted to create a lacrosse culture here. And so that's what we're doing, and it evolves through time. But about on the high school team, about 50% of the kids are indigenous, not necessarily Paiute. We've got Umatilla kids, we've got Mojave kids, we got Paiute kids, we got Shoshone kids. We have a pretty darn diverse group of kids, more than you'll find in most places. And we're in a town of 5,000 people out in the middle of nowhere in the boonies of Southeast Oregon. So, it's kind of what we do. What our priorities are, and Kevin and I touched on that a lot, I think, when we did our presentation together. It's not about the X's and O's for us. We have other things that we are trying to teach, and our program incorporates some of those teachings and approach to the game. And I was watching, I think it was a PLL game, the Sixers yesterday, and I started hearing the announcers talk about playing the game with joy. And I was like, boy, we talked about that a lot a few weeks ago, playing the game with joy. And that's one of the things we try to do. Got to have a smile on your face.
Thank you so much, Rick. That was wonderful. Kevin, we would love to hear your background as well now.
Yeah, Stiano Swaguego. Well, I grew up in a community called Oswego, Dwagadango. It's Grand River territory on the Six Nations of the Grand River. And so for me, I guess, and my ancestors, the game, I guess, is that we call Diwan de Hada Jikwais is a way of life for us. I guess it's still very rooted very much in who we are, and it's part of our ceremony still. It's we do a ceremony every year, like I say, to honor the game and respect the game, and it is still part of, we'll say, of the of what we do as people, like I say, and it's for us, it's still what we call that onaguatra. It's that medicine, and it's something I said that I've never really forgotten. I think a couple of times I probably strayed away from that, we'll say, as a teen, as a young adult, kind of maybe kind of forgetting about that a little bit, just caught up in the competitiveness of the game, I think. But I think it's always been there for me, because I know as a young person growing up in Haudenosaunee country, you're often reminded of that, not only by your parents, but your grandparents, I think, and even going way back, like I say, into the past, because like my dad played, my grandfather played, great. And so it's just been kind of part of my life journey. And I know my son played, my daughter, she picks up the stick once in a while as well. Once we go out and kind of travel in different communities, and so she'll pick up the stick and she'll kind of have some of these, we'll say, inspirational moments. Well, she'll be able to pick it up kind of like one hand like that. I know that happened this kind of summer when we were traveling last summer. We were out in British Columbia doing a program with one of her cousins, and she picked it up one hand. Look at that, I can do this now. And so that's just like the light goes on, right? When you see those moments with the young kids, like she's going on 12, so she's just trying to figure it out. But it's just been part of who we are, like you say, as Sequoia Dison's game, who we call the creator. Like you say, it's been something that's been, we'll say, gifted to us. It's a game that was played, like you say, by Flint and Sapling, and when they played for a number of different reasons. But the whole big thing about it is that it's rooted in our way. We believe it also comes from the heavens above, and now we also play it here on a Wednesday on Mother Earth. And it's really changed and transitioned over the years, we'll say, from that, we'll say, a game that originally was played to kind of like settle a dispute and used for healing, used for medicine, and now it's kind of morphed into this more of a, we'll say, contemporary sport, which I believe still has power in it, and I know that, like, you can feel it when you watch the young ones play, whether you're a young girl playing, whether you're a young guy playing, if you're a man, you're an adult. It's just part of who we are, and I think that's part of our identity, our nationhood, and it's just like something that we've been given, and like I think about I think I shared the time I received my first, we'll say, the Ganya, that wooden stick, that hickory stick, when I would say when I was 4, and my dad just said, like, "Agyon day." It's just like you had a big smile on your face when you got that from your Uncle Howard, because my Uncle Howard would travel around, and he was a great orator, like a lot of the Haudenosaunee people, like a lot of Indigenous people are, and it's like a lot of people are, storytelling, and went and shared a lot of who we are with people, so they had a better understanding, and so. And I received that stick from him, and it just lit me up. Like you say, I think that's probably, like you say, something that I will always kind of remember, and it's part of my journey. He's been part of my life journey. My son played, but my son actually once he started growing, we lived in BC. We moved back here to Grand River territory. We've kind of moved around a lot. Then he grew one year, basically went from here to here to here, right? And then he become a basketball player. But the whole big thing about it, he still picks up the stick once in a while. Like, he's 22 now, and I think that's the whole big thing, is he's connected to it as well. But I think that's that whole aspect that all the families connect to it, is all connected to it. Even last night we were at my brother's house. Like, he invited us all over, because the big game last night, the big game was between Buffalo Bandits and the Halifax Thunderbirds, and the Thunderbirds obviously are owned by Mr. Kurt Stiers, who has done a lot for the game here in our community, like many others. And it was a awesome kind of game. I didn't start off well for the Birds. They got behind like 8-2. They pulled their regular tender, but they turned it around, turned it on, come back, and ended up taking a 14-12 victory, like you say. And all our family was there, right? And to me, that's really. That's what it's all about. It's about bringing the family together. It's bringing the community together. It's about sharing that opportunity. We all kind of ate together. The kids would watch some of it. They'd kind of go away and kind of do their thing. The adults would say, "Well, what'd you think about that player? What'd you think about that play? What'd you think about that play?" And so it's kind of like that whole kind of back and forth. And I remember, like, when I was playing, like I say, competitively, like, we'd kind of sit there after the game, kind of do our little post game analysis, and then I was often floored by the amount of knowledge, like I say, that my mother had about the game. But saying that, she grew up with the game too, right? Her dad was a player, coach, and he coached at Hornell. He played in New York State, as well as here in Ontario, and so it just, and like her brother played as well, and so she was surrounded by the game, and so she knew a lot about the game, and I think that's really what it was all about for me, is just like getting that, we'll say, indoctrination into what it really was all about. Because my dad played as well, and he traveled around, and he worked in the steel industry. So I remember, like, kind of journeying around when I was younger, like I say, having to sometimes go and pick him up, and we'd go into the States, and for him to go watch him play, then we'd go here, we'd go there. But it just become part of, I guess, our lifestyle, and this, like I say, it's part of our way of life still. And I think that's really what it's been all about for me, is just trying to share the game, and educate the game, and participate in the game. We'll say, like, as a player, as a coach, and then as a manager, and now still doing a lot of administration work as well. And I kind of got back into the game, like, even in our tender years, in our 50s, we'll say we're young at heart. I said, but the whole big thing about it is that it just kind of takes hold of you, right? It takes hold of you. And I know one of the local high schools got me back coaching for my nephew's team last year at Hagersville Secondary, and it's a smaller school, and I know they don't get a lot of support kind of there. They were one of the powerhouse kind of programs way back kind of when we say 15 kind of 20 years ago, when they probably won, I don't know how many officers in a row, 3 or 4 officer all Ontario kind of championships in a row, when they had a really good crop of young guys and women kind of coming out of that school. And so, but it's kind of fallen off. But so that was kind of my opportunity, because my son quit playing about 10 years ago, like you say, and maybe 10, maybe 9 years ago. but then I hadn't coached since then. So it was interesting coming back to it, right? But I've never lost the love for it, because like part of our program, we go around to schools, colleges, universities, communities, and teach people about what this creators game is all about, and traveling around and educating. I think the more you educate, and I know some of the people that we talk to said the more teachable moments that we can have, the greater understanding that we have of one another. And to me, that's what it's all about. We're still here. We're still going to be involved. We're still going to be playing, and it just, and I think it, to me, it just it fills me with a generous amount of pride, and that I have, like you say, in watching these young kids now play this game at the highest level, and the ones that are going on getting an education out of it as well, and doing some wonderful things in a college or university. It could be at a MCLA school, could be at a USIL school, could be whatever level they want to be, D1, D2, 3, like JUCO. It's whatever they want to do, right? It could be field lacrosse, could be box lacrosse, could be sixes, could be sevens, and then it could be a hybrid kind of game. As long as they're participating and enjoying themselves and having fun, to me, that's really what it's all about. And like I say, I mentioned it's rooted in who we are. It's rooted as a medicine game. I'll always know it as that, because that's who I am, because I play in it, like you say, every spring at our longhouse. And so, but I've also played the contemporary kind of sport and traveled all over the world to share this game. And that's really what it's all about to me. It's all about community, and it's all about family, and it's all about sharing and caring for one another, and being kind and helping, because this game helps people. I've seen it. Yeah.
Thank you, Kevin. You know, that really resonates with me, because I was gifted this game by my father when I was a kid. And I remember one of my first memories was playing catch with him. And my love for the game started that day. And, you know, hearing that lacrosse for your community has such a generational perspective, and has this view about looking to the future and looking to make sure that the next generation has that access to the game. Um, it also just like fills me with joy to think about the future of lacrosse, and hoping that more people will be able to learn about the game, pick up the stick, but then also have this relationship with lacrosse that I've learned over my you know, as I grew up, I came to understand the history of America, and the history of our relationship with the people that had been here before us. And, you know, that requires a certain amount of acknowledgement and understanding of historical facts. But once you can move beyond that and understand what happened, and understand, you know, what effects that has on today, you're filled with this understanding that you can make a difference in how other people understand the world that they live in. Understand that you can help them potentially have a more inclusive and understanding view of other people and of other cultures. And I would love for someone who plays lacrosse to learn about this heritage and this culture, and from that be much more interested in connecting with and learning about those cultures. And ultimately, hopefully that leads us all to a place where we are much nicer to each other and treat each other with a much more respect and dignity. Because as I understand it, you know, your presentations to the Oregon High School Lacrosse Association were centered around sportsmanship and around understanding the roots of the game, and how it can inform a joyful view of the game, and a less adversarial view. Because like you say, there are games that, you know, lacrosse exists in all forms, and even the games that are played at longhouses with every generation is lacrosse, and has that medicinal healing quality. It has that community quality, and it also has that inclusiveness as well.
Very much so.
Yeah, I also think about the story of resiliency that's represented in lacrosse as well. The fact that your community is able to carry on this tradition, and have such a wonderful culture of history, and understanding of where your heritage comes from. That's not necessarily something that I can call on in my everyday, but it is wonderful to be able to learn about that and engage with that, and know that because I play this sport, and I care about it and I love this sport, I can also connect with a culture that calls this sport part of their history and their heritage. And I just find it so amazing that a sport that's continuing to be played today in so many forms was that form of governmental relations between groups of people. I find that just so amazing, and such a fun thought, thinking about the past.
Nice.
And I was in attendance of your guys' presentation for the OHSLA coaches, and there were a few points that really stuck with me. But the first one was, Kevin, when you were presenting about Flint and Sapling in their game, and you were talking about the one rule that they had made, and there was a group, but there was 50 grown men in that room with a lot of lacrosse experience, and you were going around and you were asking that rule, and people were going around saying discipline or honor, respect, and you were like, yeah, all those work. And you kind of sat there for a second, and Rick finally chimes in and says, rule
Yeah.
was not to touch the ball with your hand.
Yeah.
And I think that was just such a crazy point because, there were so many people in there that you would think have at least heard this story once. And that was really the first time for all of us there. And ever since then, since I've been coaching, I'm really trying to focus on not touching the ball with my hands. And especially when I'm having to clean up all the balls, it's like I got to take a little bit extra time. But I feel like that's
good.
that's part
That's good. Yeah,
it's
is.
going through that, and
I
it's
know.
experiencing it, and it's understanding it. And so that's been a really fun part. And I thought it was both hilarious and sad that nobody could answer your question. And going back to both your points on the joy of lacrosse and playing with that, I think for another example, when I was coaching, you also talked about letting them be creative and not getting mad at them for, behind the backs or through the legs or whatever. And one of my players came up to me, he's like, could I do a behind the back there? And I was like, I would love it if you did a behind the back. And I feel like as I've been playing lacrosse since I've been in 7th grade, all of the coaches are always yelling at people for behind the backs and shovel passes and everything.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that was kind of an eye opener because for you guys, it's like, let them do that. And you really see that when players are on the biggest stages like Lyle, you see his creative flow with the game and you're like, why is nobody else really doing this? And I think it's becoming more of a thing. But when you guys said that, I was like, I don't think I've ever heard any type of coach tell me that they would love to see me or one of my teammates do a behind the back of some sorts. So I think that's really influential for those kids just because it brings that little bit of joy and not having to worry about a coach yelling at you after you make a mistake of some sort. So I think that's something that I've really tried incorporating in my coaching philosophy. But yeah, I think you guys had a lot of great knowledge in that presentation. And for myself and all of those grown men who didn't know much about what you guys were talking about, I think it was really helpful for all of us just understanding that a little bit more and understanding our part and how we can help.
Yeah, I had to chime in because I didn't want to be there all night long going through everything.
We would have been. That's for sure.
So let's move it along.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I think.
Yeah, where are we picking up from, fellas?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was just checking my
All of
notes,
this-
thinking about
they'll
what was
be
a
perfect.
what was a
Awesome.
good next step. And I think it would be a great time for some questions. Sam, you had some questions for them, right?
Yeah. I just think for non-Indigenous people, they struggle with doing their part and learning more about your guys' culture. And so what can today's lacrosse players learn and incorporate from the Indigenous roots of the sport? And another thing off of that is, what can they do to influence others and just grow the game itself?
So I'm not Indigenous. I just happen to be coach of a program that it is affiliated with Burns Bayou Tribe. I'm also a dad of 3 Indigenous boys, teenage boys. So and they all play. And so I think I tried to make it clear. I don't think, we do our thing for our games. I don't think people are certainly I'm not, and I certainly not speaking for Kevin, but not expecting people to copy. I think one of the best things you could do to respect and honor the game is actually understand it. Spend some time learning it, and then You know, not to relitigate George Beers and what he did with, you know, the father of modern lacrosse, is get back to the joy, get back to the respect and the honor of the game. Stop, you know, it's not football with sticks, right? You know, and I touched on at my presentation, you know, some of the behaviors that we've from fans or you know, and other folks directed towards our program. There have been few and far between, but some have been, I would view as pretty serious. I think learn the game, learn the history of the game. Where does it come from? And then put some of those things into practice about honor and respect, about, you know, your opponent is not your enemy. He's your partner. He is your partner. You can't play lacrosse by yourself, right? We're not playing solitaire here. We need that other person. And so there is a certain level of respect. And that's really one of the things we really tried to do in our program, is to show other programs, but including our kids, what this game really is all about, because a lot of our kids are multi-sport athletes, and I don't want to say it's necessarily win at all costs, but you know, the W's are extremely important. And the teaching aspect of it, of you know, the phrase is, you know, sports can teach character. Well, there's another side of it. Sports can expose character. And, you know, and so what are we trying to do? Expose character? Or are we actually trying to mold it into trying to make positive, productive young men, or if you're in the women's game, women? The game has a lot of potential to teach. You know, and it all comes down to coach, right? I made the statement at the presentation, and this statement isn't mine. It was at a camp I was working at. What are the two most powerful words on campus, of a high school campus? Coach said. So if coach said that's okay, then it's okay. If coach said that's unacceptable, then it's unacceptable. The coach is the one that sets the tone. And if the coach understands the game, appreciates the teachings and of the game, then could have some huge influence on not only the game, a game being played, but also the culture of their program, and also the culture of the league, which is really what we're trying to do, is address some of the culture. And it's not just the Oregon High School Lacrosse Association that's struggling with sportsmanship issues, right? Oregon is trying to address it in this manner, instead of sending out emails telling people to be nice to each other or fining people. It doesn't work. And it's really getting down to the foundation of the game. I think that's really what OHSLA is trying to do. Heck, U of O is trying to do that. You know, in a few weeks, I'm going to go over with several of my players, and we're going to do our pre-game Thanksgiving at the U of O SMU game, and for a lot of the same reasons, right? So we were asked to go there and do that, and introduce players and fans to really what the game is. That's all I got.
Just to add to that, like Rick makes a really good point, and in terms of, we'll say the true roots of the game. And I think that's why we do what we do, is because we want people to understand that even though we'll say the majority of the players who play today, we'll say, are non-Indigenous, the whole big thing about it is that the contemporary sport has its origins, right? And it goes way back to all these nations, or as they say in the US, we'll say tribal nations, who played all these stick ball games, and doesn't matter what region you were in, everyone had a version of a stick ball game. And I think that's what people try to have a hard time kind of understanding. There's this kind of misnomer out there that it's just sort of like privileged kind of preppy kind of type of sport, which is really not. It's just people are just want to say that just because they really don't know and don't really truly understand, right? And you say, so you even go back to like our style game is Haudenosaunee, like you say, then the sticks have changed over the years, right? Like you say, we were kind of known for our big bend kind of style stick, where the we'll say the our Odawas, the Ojibways, the Potawatomis, the Ho-Chunks, the Menominees had their Great Lakes style stick. Then you go out to Burns Paiute with their Nedzitsika, they had their own kind of style game, right? Salish Kootenai had their game. Like you had the Cherokees had theirs, the Seminoles, everyone had a different kind of version, right? And it's just been kind of like, we'll say, adapted over the years and transformed, because what I say, technology, right? Technology has kind of changed a lot of things, but for us, it's always been rooted in terms of who we are. And I think that's why I always was of the notion. I said that want to make sure that people understand that where it truly comes from and what it's all about, and it's not what you read in Wikipedia or online or social media or this and that, or some of the literature that you'll see from some World Lacrosse federations or some of the sport organizations. It's not about that at all, right? It has such a deeper meaning and connection to the people and the families and the communities that play this great game. And but in its essence, it's still a simple game, right? It's a stick ball game. That's what it is, right? You use your hands-eye coordination and everything, and that's what it is. But it's a beautiful game. It's one of the most beautiful games in the world, and that's why I think I've always been taught, I think, by my dad and my grandfather to have that creativity. Like growing up with two other brothers, and obviously a dad who played, and a lot of the family who played, going in the backyard and learning, and we were always encouraged to try different things. Like you say, just don't settle with one shot, son. Try something different. If that's not working, hey, go underhand, go backhand, go sidearm, go between the legs. That was always encouraged, and that's what you see of all the players who play now in this day and age. Like you say, they're doing. It doesn't matter if you're Indigenous or you're not Indigenous. You're just seeing so many people, like you say, kind of put the fun back into the game and then realize what it's truly all about. And I'm never gonna penalize somebody for like trying a backhand, because that lifts your team up. That's what it does, right? If you score a goal like that, or you make a great play, you take the ball away from somebody, you get transition, boom, 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 and it's in the net. Hey, that transition goal can change the whole energy, can change everything. One goalie makes a big save and starts a big outlet, it goes down the field or it goes down the floor. It changes the whole dynamic and energy even of the crowd, even the fans who are there watching, right? And I think that's just the beauty of it, because it's not, and that's not preppy, that's not Burns Paiute, that's not Zitsika, that's not Haudenosaunee. That's just people purely enjoying the game for what it is and what they're doing on that floor and field. And it's just like magnificent what they can do on that. And it's just like amazing, like the gifts that these young women and men have. Yeah. So and so that's an aspect. I said that we always want to make sure that we're educating people about the values of the game and what it's truly all about. That's what's important to me at my stage of my life.
Thank you. You know, that's something that I'm really learning. I'm 28 now, and once I had finished college, I found that I wasn't necessarily as engaged with my community. And so I found that going back in and coaching elementary and middle school lacrosse was really rewarding for me. And it really got me back in touch with the generational aspect of the sport and also just the joyous nature of it, because I had been playing at a very competitive, very elite level, where sportsmanship wasn't the biggest priority. And so I was able to just get back in touch with the medicinal nature of the game. And I love that the different versions of stickball in different forms, they all have that same heritage in lacrosse and they all have that same history. And I think hearing you talk about the next generation, I think one topic that I really want to talk about today is how in 2028 the Olympics is planning on including lacrosse, and I just feel pretty strongly that if they that Haudenosaunee inclusion and representation as a nation, specifically for that sport, is so central to its inclusion in the Olympic Games. And one of the central reasons for me is because when the Olympic Games was starting their cultural tradition over in ancient Greece, I'm sure the Haudenosaunee people were practicing lacrosse as a community as well, as in many different forms. And so to think that one has a more storied or more important heritage is wrong. And I really hope that the U.S. Olympic Committee, the Canadian Olympic Committee, World Lacrosse, all unifiedly request that the International Olympic Committee include the Haudenosaunee under their own flag, specifically for me, because lacrosse is being included in the games. I think it's just central to have the originators, the stewards, the first practicers of the sport who were gifted it from their creator to be represented there. And so I would love to hear any thoughts that you, Kevin or Rick, had about that.
I'll let Rick go first, and I'll chime in again since we're just being consistent.
Okay. I obviously have very strong feelings about whether, the Haudenosaunee should be allowed to represent themselves and come in under their own flag, right? Under their own flag. If not, then why would anybody go? I mean, I could think of several countries, Ireland or probably wouldn't even show up. Why would anybody go? Would Japan go? I don't know. Would some of these other countries go? They may go. I won't watch it. Right? I mean, it's like, okay, well, to me, if they're not allowed to come in under their own flag, then you probably should, USA Lacrosse and Lacrosse Canada ought to just say, well, let's just pull this and we'll think of something else. And I'm sure Kevin has some ideas on that.
Yeah. I think for me, if I'm always of the belief if the intent is there and the goodwill is there, that it will happen. I'm more, we'll say, of an optimist, like you say, I think, and I think that's kind of where I kind of land on this as well. And then if the powers to be in the IOC and others don't see it that way, then more than likely, like you say, just like Rick said, like there's gonna probably be some nations, countries who just don't want to participate, and I think you're gonna see that. But I don't think at this particular point in time where the sport's at, with the World Lacrosse trying to grow it and trying to get to, we'll say, the 120 nations by a certain kind of time frame of people partnering up, that it will have its same kind of feel if the Haudenosaunee are not there. And I honestly believe that, because and notwithstanding, like I say, our second in the world in indoor or slash box and third in the world, like I say, and I really believe if we had, like I say, a Dahoga this last year at the Worlds, like I say, that third would have probably been second or maybe possibly first, like I say, and he didn't play. He was a big part of our team, like I say, and I think that would have changed a lot of the kind of momentum around kind of where we finished. And now with the women coming on board, like I say, having built a solid foundation, we'll say, since 2007 and participating in field, and now now coming back and you say and participating now in the box game. There'll be 10 nations competing in Utica further this year. That's awesome to see. And then I think that's the excitement I think that goes with this game. And I think that's something that I think everyone kind of gets really hyped up about is when we go somewhere and it's not being crass or it's not being overly exaggerated, is that it's ever since we played, and I've said this to a lot of people, and people may not like it, but you know what? We are the show. That's what it is. That's what it is, and it's not even a show. It's really it's who we are, like you say, and everyone wants to come and see our people. And then you've seen it down in San Diego. It was the same thing. Like you say, I was there for the games last year, and I've been there at a number of games, like participating in a number of different forums, like I say. And so that's the whole aspect of it, is that there's there to see the Haudenosaunee people play. And that's let's just make it happen. Find a way to make it happen. Yeah. And if it doesn't, what's going to happen? We're going to probably end up hosting our own World Games. That's what's going to happen. And then people are going to be coming to Onondaga, Six Nations, Akwesasne, who knows where. That's what's going to happen. And I really don't think the World Lacrosse will be ready for that. Yeah, like you say, and just let's just find a way, people, because we can make it happen. We'll find a way. Yeah, there's every plausible solution for every challenge out there, and that's what I see. Yeah, from my lens. Yeah, so.
Thank you. I feel very strongly about this because I believe that the story of your community's resiliency and survival is important, and that representation at the international level, when the Olympic Games plays lacrosse, being represented there is the bare minimum, in my opinion. I think that there's nothing we can do about what's happened in the past, but we can absolutely set a better path forward and create the world in which we hope our children get to live in. Because I hope to be raising my kids in a world where lacrosse is celebrated, where its original roots are understood. And even at the international level, there is that acknowledgement that this sport is special. It comes from a community of people. It has a history of resiliency, and it can teach you more about life and about yourself than you realize.
Yeah, and then just and in saying that as well, like you say, it's to me, it goes beyond, transcends sport, and I always said that, because if you look at a lot of the indigenous nations, not just indigenous either, like a lot of the nations across the world, like you say, they have a very strong identity, a nationhood, a language, a way of life, customs, ceremony, song, dance. We have the same. We exactly have the same as any other, and if not even more. And we never put the borders there, right? We didn't put the borders there, and we didn't do that, right? And I think that's the thing that people got to remember. But also the other part of it is when you talk about who we are as Haudenosaunee per se, I can't talk to other nations about who they are. I says, but we are people of the great peace. And we're taught to be kind and respectful and helpful to one another. That's part of our way of life. That's part of who we should be, our teachings. And so as people of the great peace, if we're taught to be kind, respectful, helpful to one another, help lift one another up, to me, that's the climax of the games and what they're all about. When I look at even at the IOC charter and so on and so forth, believe me, we've read it over and over and over again. I said, but those are some of the foundation of what it's all about, right? And if people of the great peace across the world can't be at these games, then you tell me. Yeah, you tell me. Yeah.
I think really, like you said, if they want it to happen, they'll find a way. And I think that goes the same for the Olympic Committee. And like if they really want to make it happen, they'll make it happen. And I think it will be very telling if that doesn't happen.
Yes.
Hopefully it does not get to that point though.
I know, exactly. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd like to switch gears. Go for it.
I'm
Boz.
so sorry. I just wanted to say, I also hope that we within the near future have off the ground a petition to allow a lacrosse community member from anywhere in the world to voice their support for the Haudenosaunee to be included in the Olympic Games, because I do feel strongly that this is doing my part in a way, having this interview, talking to both of you about this issue. Hopefully more people learn about it. Hopefully more people are engaged with it, and feel strongly about it the same way we do. And that we continue to really reestablish what the truth is, and what we can acknowledge as what's beneficial to the next generation and to the future of the sport. I cut you off though, Sam. Please jump back in. I think there was another question.
You're all good. I just wanted to kind of touch on, the stick making process and truly what these sticks mean to your community. And I think this is something that all lacrosse players can relate to, because while our sticks are made in a different light, I think everybody has that attachment to their stick and that love for their stick. I know I definitely feel some type of connection just because that's my treasure. Maybe it changes every now and then, but that's my one thing that I have and I can control. So I would love to just hear a little bit about how, that really relates to your community and how you guys feel about it.
I'll let Kevin take the first one on this.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Well, the Wanganya for me is like that shagbark hickory stick, like you say. Then I know some people, some nations use different, we'll say, trees and different variations of, we'll say, sticks, and that's fine. Like I said, everyone has their thing. We'll either do shagbark or smoothbark kind of hickory. Then it kind of relates to a lot of the stories that we've heard over the years, like you say, about where this kind of stick emanated from and how it came to be. You hear stories like of the Thunder Boy. You hear stories of this lightning, I say, striking kind of a stick as well. And then that's the whole aspect of hitting a tree, then taking that stick and taking the, we'll say, best part of that kind of stick and the heartwood of a stick, or whatever shape or form that some of these wonderful stick makers have had over the years, who've crafted some of these wonderful works of art, we'll say. And that's what they are. They're works of art. Like you say, people have been making them for hundreds and thousands of years. And I think that's something that it'll always be part of who we are. And I think that's part of it. It's the essence. It's the aspect of what we do. And I have to pay respect and honor to all of these stick makers, because a lot have come, a lot have gone over the years, and some of them are just phenomenal. And even the ones who are coming up who are a little bit younger these days, we'll say in their early 20s and their early 30s, they're not going to be, say, like a Mr. Jock or something like that, who made sticks for a number of years, or other families like from Haudenosaunee or Onondaga or Grand River or Tonawanda or other kind of communities down in Cattaraugus, down in Ohio. There's just so many stick makers all over, and Oneida, and then you have all the other non-Haudenosaunee stick makers, we'll say, like I say, from the Great Lakes and all these other areas, who are still doing and sharing those wonderful sticks to this day. And you're seeing a lot of these sticks kind of like what I say, kind of reviving the spirit of the game in the communities. And that's what I see, like I say, not only as a medicine game, but the spirit of the game, and then actually taking that kind of to the next level, encouraging the stick makers to get involved with it, and putting on different kind of events for the community, and even just to show and honor that beautiful work of art, because that's what it is. Like I say, we're still here. The men are still stringing up the sticks, and then I know in the past, like a lot of the women played a major instrumental role in weaving and stringing some of the sticks. Not so much these days, I said, but that to me is an integral part of keeping our game alive as well. And I cannot only say it for Haudenosaunee, but some of the other non-Haudenosaunee nations as well, who are keeping their stickball games alive, because it's important. Because like I say, we don't want to lose that connection to what it's all about. And I think that's the reminder that we always have. I know, and I was talking to one of my buddies down in Oneida Nation not too long ago. They just got done some of their we'll say ceremonies, their midwinter ceremonies, and they were talking about the game that they were playing, like I say, with the wooden stick, and where some of the younger generation didn't really, we'll say, weren't really reminded about this game was all about. And so they were actually having a game, and a couple of individuals kind of got hurt in this game, and a couple of the younger guys who were playing, who are very steeped in their traditions, didn't really like that, because some of the older guys who were playing it got hurt, and it didn't really resonate. And so one of my buddies called me and he said, Dean, we were having this talk and saying, well, I think the time has come, I said, for a lot of us, I says, to make sure, I says, that people understand about what these stick games are all about. It says they're not out there to hurt one another. They weren't out there to, like, you read a lot of the literature in the past, right, where people were saying, oh, it was kind of a barbaric game. It was this, it was that, but that wasn't. We didn't write those stories. It was coming from somebody else's way, right? And so how they romanticize us and how they want to portray us, that we didn't write those stories. And so the game was never about wanting to hurt one another and this and that. And I think that's that whole aspect that we're trying to change, right? Like you say, that game. And that's what we were even talking about, like, because my buddy was asking me, he just says, so when you played the contemporary style game and you played medicine game or any type of form of a wooden stick game, where did you get hurt the most? I said, in the contemporary game. I said, literally, I literally in contemporary kind of game. I said, when we play our wooden stick game, I said, I never got injured. Never, not once. We didn't wear equipment. We still don't wear equipment. I said, no injuries. So no, nothing on the head, nothing like this. Yeah, you're gonna shove around. I said, you're gonna play the game the way it's intended to play, but there's never no injuries. I said, so I think there's a fine line there, right? And I say that's why those sticks to me are really, really important. I said, and because for us, it's part of our still ceremonies, our sacred ways, and we got to make sure that those stick makers are still making sticks, and that's what we talk about. I think a lot of our communities as well. If we're not doing some of our teachings and ceremonies and songs and games, and then maybe we cease to exist as a people, like you say, carrying that on. I don't know. There's so many different ways to look at it, but I think that's really why it's so important for us. We're still here. We're still carrying out our ways, and we're just mediums here to me for Sagoyediso, and even the work that we do. I'm just here doing the work that he wants me to do here while I'm gifted with all this time that I have still. And who knows, like I said, I never know when that time's going to be up. And this is all we can do is continue to do the best that we do to share and make sure that these sticks are still being utilized and they're still carried on in a good way. And that's, to me, that's what that stick represents to me. It's just part of who we are. It's just part of who we are.
And I remember when you were talking in your presentation at the coaches clinic, you were mentioning how your kids kind of had their first sticks and how they still had that connection. And you had some of the other guys try out the sticks. And it was a little bit harder for them than normal. Some of them couldn't even catch or throw, which was very interesting to see, just because you think these coaches, can use whatever stick and they'll be okay. But, it was really a lot harder than what they were used to. And I feel like what resonated with me the most was how you were talking about the connection to the stick and almost how it's another part of your body. It's you're almost one with it. And I feel like that's just so beautiful in itself. And just because I feel like a lot of lacrosse players can relate to that, because everyone talks about their twigs or whatever you want to call it. There's so many different variations and everyone's is different, but it truly means something to them. And that's what I think is so beautiful about the sport. So I definitely love the connectivity about the stick and God, I can't think of the other word. Another attachment for the body, I guess, but.
Oh my God, you're my daughter, my awesome daughter.
Can't get away.
I know.
Well, Boz, do you have anything else here? I think all my questions have kind of been answered.
Yeah, I think I don't think I had anything else. I just really want to say thank you so much to both of you for taking the time to speak with us, not only about sharing your culture's heritage, but sharing your feelings about the game, sharing your hope for the future of the game, and your aspirations that, you know, the international stage continues to recognize the original founders and stewards and carriers of the game. And so I just really want to express my appreciation for both of you, and I can't wait to see you in person in a few weeks, Rick. I'm so excited to hear that that you will be able to join us for our first home game in a few weeks. I was really hoping that we would be able to experience that, and I'm so excited to hear that. So thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, but one thing we should talk about, and so I brought this up, and Kevin brought this up too at the coaches meeting, and that's and I think you touched on the outline, is how does this mainstream contemporary lacrosse reach out to Native communities, right? So someone asked the question when we were doing the clinic, how many teams have Indigenous players on their team? And a couple teams picked them up, right? Lifted their hands. So how many Native Americans this is estimated live in Portland, Oregon? How many?
I feel like you guys said a lot more than I expected last time.
40,000.
Yeah.
40,000. How many reservations are there in the state of Oregon? 9. How many Native players are playing, right? And it's not, and it's just not that easy. Kevin and I have had this discussion before, right? Playing Johnny Apple sticks, just dropping sticks off everywhere, like the old Johnny Appleseed. I don't think it's a solution either, because I'm not so sure that's because there's no mentoring or whatever. And I asked the question, why would a young Indigenous male, a kid, a boy, or a girl, or a family want to engage with the contemporary lacrosse community? And I think the other thing that, if I'll say when, I'm not gonna say if, I'm gonna say when the Haudenosaunee enter the opening Olympic ceremony under their flag, and they start playing, and then you have the whole lacrosse being played. I think folks better be ready, because I think you're going to see a huge bump in the number of youth and families and communities getting interested in the game. And it's not in upstate New York, right? And we'll talk about the United States. It'll be in the Western US or the Southwest, or maybe some other areas where the game really hasn't caught on yet with Indigenous communities. But that's the other part, and I don't know if you remember, but I showed several pictures of my program, right? Both at the youth and at the high school level. And it's like, so I play with, my high school team usually has 12, 13 kids, and half are Native. And in the youth program, about 30% are. And I refuse to believe that Burns, Oregon is that unique. That can only be done here. I just refuse to believe that. And that to me gets back into the growth aspect of the game. Not just sportsmanship, but growth, because and it's not because people don't want it to grow. I think Brian Silcott kind of hit on that when he presented. Growth has been based on serendipity. Some East Coast schmuck like myself shows up in some little town somewhere, and lacrosse gets started. I don't think lacrosse can think that way anymore. There needs to be a better strategy, like at the Oregon level. How can the game grow? Because if you look at its distribution, it's really a Portland sport for big 6A schools. But you can play football in Burns, you can play football in Crane, Oregon, right? With a high school that has 80 kids in it. You can't tell me you can't play lacrosse in these same types of communities. I think part of it is the stereotype that lacrosse has of itself, who are lacrosse players, and a stereotype of people who are not in the lacrosse community of what lacrosse players are. And, I think, Kevin touched on it before, that stereotype is actually counterproductive and counter to what lacrosse is. I'll get off my soapbox now.
That's a good point, Rick, because like even tomorrow, like I'm traveling to one of our sister communities, Haudenosaunee Nation, and we're having a meeting with the Ontario Lacrosse Association and the First Nations Lacrosse Association and other parties, and talking about these new teams who are coming into we'll say the FNLA league from my community as Grand River, and you have the provincial sport governing body who are kind of up in arms about it and just saying, like, what are you guys doing? How come you didn't come to us, right? And it's a true story. It's a true story, like you say, and just saying, well, what do you mean? Why do we have to go to you? I says, and it's our communities. I said, it's like building nationhood, togetherness. I says, unity, what the Hiawatha belt represents as us as a people. I says, and I says, we don't have to go to you to decide when we want to have our own lacrosse teams. I says, what you're worried about is insurance. What you're worried about is your membership fees. I says, what you're worried about is this and that and other things. And all of a sudden they go like this, right? They go like this. They no, it's not about that. This is and come on. It is so. I said, so don't. I said, so we're going to a meeting tomorrow to have these discussions and saying, well, what is the real matter then, right? Like you say, there's nothing preventing us from having our own teams. Our big challenge, I said, is when we have these teams is that if you're saying you as the governing body control everything or own everything, and I says that's how they think. I says and then their big thing is like trying to claim that, and I says, but they have nothing to back it up, and we're just saying, I says, well, give us plausible reason why we can't do what we can't do within our communities. And I says, because we've been doing it for thousands and thousands of years already. And it goes back to the point that Rick brings up as well, like when he talks about, like I say, like there should be communities who should be doing this everywhere, right? And like I say, and I know there's awesome individuals in South Dakota and Salish Kootenai and Minneapolis and Minnesota and people all over, we'll say the US as well as Canada, even more than Haudenosaunee. Like I say, a lot more than Haudenosaunee. We're small compared, very small population compared to the rest of the indigenous populations in the world. I said, so their programs are building, right? I said, we still have obviously the most teams. I said, but the whole big thing about it is that there should be development encouraged all over. And then I think that's the big thing that I think a lot of the governing body struggle. I'm glad you brought this up, Rick, because that's an important point. I said, because like that's I think the aspect of inclusion or exclusion and people, like I say, how do we encourage, we'll say, indigenous participation in some of these bigger multi kind of sport events? I says, and that's true. No matter if you're Native American or you're First Nation vis-a-vis up here or Métis or Inuit, I said, you still have that option to compete. I says, but just like you mentioned there, like we don't have any teams in the Canada Games. We don't have First Nation specific teams in Canada Games. And people say, you don't? I says, no, we don't. I says, we're excluded still in 2024, right? And it's It's insane to think that in this day and age, like you say, that there's still an exclusionary sport and it's our game. I don't know. It boggles the mind, man. It totally boggles the mind. Yeah. That's another discussion, though. Yeah, but a very solid point. Yeah.
So what do you think then is the best way for some of these teams to reach out and try and figure out a solution? Is it reaching out to a reservation and inviting some type of format for the players to come and join a team, or is it some communities around the area trying to help them out and make a team? What do you think that looks like for communities to try and help out?
I think it's come and talk to us. Come and talk to us. If you come here and just like Rick and I talk about it, if you come to my house, I'm going to be hospitable to you. I'm going to treat you well. I'm going to feed you. I'm going to offer you this. I'm going to offer you that. We'll sit there and have a dialogue about whatever we're going to talk about. That's where it starts, right? It's where it starts. It starts right in that community, and it starts right in that home. And it's just like people being open and not being afraid to come to a Native American community or a First Nation community, because there's a lot of non-Indigenous people who are afraid to come to our communities. And that's true. And for whatever reason, they're afraid. Yeah, I don't know why. No idea. Yeah. I'm sure you guys have set foot on Native American soil, I would imagine, right?
I have not.
See, there we go.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you're afraid or
No,
nothing
totally.
like that, but you get there, yeah.
Right. You are not wrong at all. Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I think that is actually a great point, and opportunity for a lot of people just to start that
Reach out.
conversation. Yeah.
Say hi.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. We're all in it together. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we are. And so, for example, when we're over there at U of O, in a couple weeks, 3 weeks, something like that. But U of O has a huge Indigenous population, right? For compared to a lot of other universities, they have their many nations longhouse. But what kind of interaction has there ever been between the lacrosse programs, whether it's the MCLA team or the women's NCAA team, with them? I don't know. But the U of O men's MCLA team is going to make an effort. It's going to try. So Burns Paiute tribe, their powwow now has been for the last, I don't know, 8-9 years, been called the Burns Paiute tribe powwow and lacrosse games. So we play lacrosse during powwow. We invite other teams to come from Oregon. Usually it's some players from Mountain View and some players from Sisters that come. We receive criticism from other programs within the state of Oregon for holding them, because sometimes they're held in the fall. We have no control when powwow committee wants to have powwow. No control at all. Saying that that's inappropriate to do that because of the rules regarding coach contact with players outside of season. And I'm like, you're kidding me, right? Yeah, we all know what goes on in Portland. Don't give me that. Hey, if you're going to worry about some little program out in the middle of out in the sagebrush, and you're going to make a point of it now, but that's a great opportunity. And I brought it up to folks. We play with no equipment, and it's just play. And the players get to be part of grand entry of powwow, and exactly. And I'll give you an example. Kevin talked about being afraid, and Kevin and I spoke about this. About 10-12 years ago, U.S. Lacrosse gave a equipment grant to a community that has a large Indigenous population in the community and a large reservation outside the community. And so I traveled down there and tried to get it up and going. I went meet with some tribal representatives about doing this. And then I tried to get some of the people who were they were non-native, But I had set something up where they could go in and talk with council, with tribal council. And they refused to do it because they were afraid. And I was like, what are you afraid of? He goes, we're afraid about going saying something or doing something that they find insulting. And I was like, no one's going to hold it against you. It's people. If something is said wrong or whatever, they'll correct you, just like you should be corrected. But but what you just did is just disrespected them by not going. So you just did what you tried to avoid. And in my position, because of I've been here for a long time, worked with Burns Pike, tried to get this program going. I have 3 Native sons, and then in my regular job, I used to do government to government consultation. In other words, U.S. government with a federally recognized tribe. So it's called government to government consultation. It's like Department of State working with a foreign nation. They're sovereign nations. So, I'm much more comfortable, right? Because I've done it a lot and I do it all the time. But, number one, you got to want to. You got to think about it. And like Kevin says, come and visit. Come and have that conversation. And, it's people, right? You got to develop relationships. And it's hard. And I've asked that question before. How come, the OHSLA or Oregon lacrosse community hasn't moved out into these communities and do these types of things? The answer I get is, well, it's hard. Yeah, I know. But, yeah. And if it's worth doing, it's probably hard. Right. and right. If it was easy, everyone would be doing it. Right. And, but, there's something going on in lacrosse right now. And I think people are recognizing that the game is really, really diverging. And I think there's people saying we're on the wrong track. And there's other people who probably don't care. But I also believe there are people who say something's wrong and we need to fix some things. And I think that's what OHSLA is trying to do. I think they're recognizing that. I think there's been a wasted opportunity in the state of Oregon to grow. But at the same time, there's opportunity to fix it and make it really reach its potential.
Yeah, I mean,
Kevin,
thinking about, I was just going to say, as a coach in the future, I'm going to be focused on making sure that my players have this opportunity to engage with another culture. I think about the fact that my dad was the head coach at Marist and created that opportunity for the Nanzitsaga to come and do a prayer of Thanksgiving, and that was transformative for me. It was really amazing to be able to be welcomed into your community for a short time and understand that connection to the sport. And I do firmly believe that it's a big reason why I'm here today and having this conversation. So I'm just thankful for all the people that provided me leadership and an example to follow. And I hope that that's what we can continue to do, is provide examples and provide opportunities for our players to meet people that they may never have an opportunity to meet in their normal lives. Because that is really how you combat fear and how you combat things like prejudice. So thank you.
Yeah, for sharing that. And I guess kind of goes back to even like I coach a lot of basketball and lacrosse, and I'll always tell my kids, I said, if you never shoot the ball in either sport, it's never going to go in. Right. And then it comes right back to that. You got a 50 chance. And then that's the whole big thing about it. I said, or make a good pass or a good play or something. And that's even I had a meeting here on Wednesday because the kids are off for midwinter ceremonies in our community right now. And and the guys from Grand Erie were wondering where we could meet. And I said, well, just come to my house. Look, my kids are around, my nephew's here. I said, my daughter's here. I said, just come to the house. I said, it'd be easier to come here. And then we sat here and had a good meeting. The kids were cooking and they offered, and just like we were saying, they were offered our guests in the house, like you said, some little treats that they were making on the stove and stuff like that. And that's that hospitable. That's that being hospitable, right? And reaching out. And he says, and that's why we all encourage everyone to do that, because if you don't ask, the answer is always going to be no. Yeah, and then you still have that little innate kind of fear or apprehension in you. But if you do, I said and like you say, obviously we've traveled around, so we've known. But also when we were younger, we also had that little apprehension. I said, but now not anymore. I said, I don't even care anymore. I said, I don't care, but you know what I mean? Yeah, it's just you can ask any question to anybody basically, and go along with it. I says, and I think that's the whole aspect of learning, right? Like you say, we always learning, we're always learning, make every day a teachable learning kind of moment. And and I really appreciate, I want to say Nyama for having us on your show, and for the time and energy, and like I say, and continue to reach out to us. We're here as a resource, and even if you want to fly things by us as well, hey, what this approach or about that approach, then we do it all the time. I know Rick does, I know I do as well. Like I say, it's just a kind of everyday thing for me. So yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kevin and Rick, again for your time today and sharing, and for all that you had to say about the world of lacrosse, and about what we all can do together, working together to make a difference. Sam, did you have any closing thoughts either?
No, I didn't. I just think that this was honestly super influential for just myself, honestly. I think, again, I haven't really been exposed to any of this information, honestly, throughout my whole life. And I've played lacrosse for a few years. So honestly, kind of disheartening that this hasn't happened before. But I think at least like Boz was saying, while I'm coaching, I will definitely be trying to do my part to educate myself and the players that I'm coaching. Because I think that this is such a I think there's a big gap between the reality of your community and what that really looks like. So again, just like Boz was saying, really appreciate you guys being on, because this was my favorite episode we've done so far. So thank you guys.
You're welcome.
Thank you both so much. Hope you have a great weekend.
Yeah, thank you as well. Yeah, now okay, have a good one.
Thank you guys.
See you, Kevin.
In closing, we hope the conversation with Kevin and Rick was educational, informative, and also inspired you to do something about this issue. We hope to be launching a petition for lacrosse communities around the world to voice their support for the Haudenosaunee people to walk under their own flag and honor the creator by continuing to be the most spectacular show in lacrosse as it is played at the Olympics in 2028. That's all for this episode of Varsity Club Lacrosse Podcast. Please like, share, and subscribe. Make sure to tune in next time for more exciting content around the world of club lacrosse. You can follow us on Instagram at Sam Criscola and Austin Boz. Thanks for listening.
See ya.
Bye.